I titled today's Neville Goddard Conversation Mind Map, "You Don't Need Proof, You Already Have It." He says, all you can possibly need or desire is already yours. You need no helper to give it to you. It's yours now. Call your desires into being by imagining and feeling your wish fulfilled. So much unnecessary suffering is caused by not recognizing that everything is done for us. Not realizing this could result in unnecessary force and control, which could lead to further suffering. Now, over the years of applying Neville's information and proving its equation in all areas of my life, I've experienced what I would consider a radical shift in consciousness, and I know you have as well. One of the greatest benefits we experience is imagining what is desired as already fulfilled and going on with our lives, causing us to not be so attached to this world of appearances, one with it, yes, physically, mentally, and emotionally, yet not overly identified with it, allowing us to easily track back to the specific cause within if an appearance is not ideal and change it to appear accordingly. From this position of understanding, we can think or feel or think feelingly of whatever implies what we would consider ideal in relation to what does not appear that way. This is a form of instant revision, and it proves the power of imagination in equation again, and again. Revision releases identification to fixed attitudes of mind, which is a belief or beliefs or even belief systems depending on the act in relation to the appearance, causing those appearances to disappear or reappear in a way that we would consider ideal. This is provided that one desires to play an active role in shaping their reality the way they desire it to be through the effortless ways of imagination, rather than believing they're merely a passive spectator to circumstances that appear not ideally, which is a false belief, as you are not a passive spectator. You have all the power to choose. That's all you do. You simply choose how you'd like it to be. That's imagining. And the unseen within takes that and externalizes it for you. Matthew 6:6. When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. And that's stated. Any ideology that suggests you don't have the power within you to shape your circumstances via your imagination is a false belief worthy of repentance. Repentance through revision in imagination is not only how we bring about radical changes in our life appearances, it also brings us into higher degrees of realization of the power, as he says here. For it is magic, the pruning shears of revision. It really is not only the achievement of objectives, but if you do it daily, it will awaken in you the Spirit of Jesus, which is continual forgiveness of sin. Now, Neville considers sin as missing the mark, which means having a purpose in life yet not realizing it. That would be considered missing the mark. Thus, any ideology that says you do not have purpose in God's play is worthy of repentance, which again means releasing identification to that specific belief in mind that causes anything to appear that reflects that belief. So anything that appears that seems to suggest you are unlovely or powerless, revise it and it will transform into lovely, proving you are powerful. This is because nothing in this world of appearances suggests anything. You are the only suggester and suggestee inside in relation to the appearances. Now, I'm not going to tell you or anyone what purpose should be. Each person knows inside, but I will say one of mine is to not look for proof or validation in this world of appearances if it seems to suggest that the power is outside. There is no power outside higher than the power of the kingdom of heaven within. Now, this is enormously freeing, and I would like everyone to experience the same. Perfect self-control in spite of appearances. As stated in the Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth. And meek means self-discipline. As he says here, meek is self-discipline. So disciplined that we think only the best We are the ones who fulfill the suggestion. Brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and there be any praise, think on these things. Philippians 4:8. Now, meek is not from a place of human force or control, rather faith and imagination, a complete surrender of human being effort to divine will, like we discussed in the recent Nikola Tesla video, which I'll link to in the description. Speaking of which, interestingly, Nikola Tesla once said, "The present is theirs, the future for which I have really worked for is mine," which is interesting. Could it mean that Tesla is coming back? I consider that a definition of meek. And you could do this as well. By simply accepting, you can do it easily as well without suffering. And so what are these appearances that could seem to indicate lack of self-control? Well, they are imaginal acts from the past. If I see them, and they are what I would not consider ideal, then it's time for repentance. Time to reimagine them ideally. And I've seen it over and over again. They no longer appear that way, the way I imagined them before. And so one of the appearances that I released over the years is unnecessary force and control, which actually I felt was released to a large degree when I learned about it in Think and Grow Rich in 2004, when he said, "If you believe that money is a result of hard work alone, perish the thought." Which makes perfect sense now because I realized through Neville's information, God does everything. That way of thinking accelerated the appearance of earning money in my job at the time, as well as I was seeing unexpected income sources show up to a larger degree at the time. Then coming across Neville's information in 2018 and studying it, I came across something eventually that he said, which polarized me again. At first I thought what Napoleon Hill said was nonsense, yet it all came true. And now Neville is saying, if we walk as though we were already the ideal we serve, we will rise to the level of our assumption and find a world in harmony with our assumption. We will not have to lift a finger to make it so, for it is already so. It was always so. So the part where he said, we will not have to lift a finger to make it so, I thought was nonsense. But then I realized it. Everything is done for you. So now I see it for how it truly is. You don't need to lift a finger. It's done for you. If any finger is to be lifted, anyone who plays a role, it's done for you. And I don't mean this in a supercilious, egotistical way. It means that God does everything in a mutually loving, harmonious way in the spirit of harmony with all to bring forth what you imagine. Like in the Dr. Millikan affirmation that Neville shared, which is, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. And by the way, what I meant by polarized in this regard is bringing to awareness a belief that was not helpful, which I was identified with, causing me to imagine it as nonsense at the time when it was actually the truth. See, if we're not identified with those unhelpful beliefs that cause that kind of polarization to information, we would see it differently, as he says here. Your beliefs, your fixed attitudes of mind, constantly modify your consciousness as it is reflected on the mirror of your mind. Your consciousness, modified by your beliefs, objectifies itself in the conditions of your world. To change your world, you must first change your conception of it. Now, we're taught to imagine lovingly and imagine wisely. This is how we experience a fulfilling, ideal life, and this has benefit for others as well as we facilitate the same in them, as he says here. So use it wisely. Use it lovingly. And anytime you use your imagination lovingly on behalf of another, you are at that moment literally mediating God to man. Imagination is the redemptive power of the world, and you are actually mediating God to man by using it in a loving, wonderful way. Now, having accepted that suggestion about what he said about not lifting the finger, I was able to see more so how things happen automatically. We find that when we release more and more unnecessary force and control each day, which again, the force and control are only fixed attitudes of mind, not permanently fixed. They could be lightly fixed or held to a dogmatic conviction of fixedness. Nevertheless, they can all be released if they're not ideal. So if those aspects of force or control appear again, we can reimagine them ideally. And what are the results? Well, for example, I shared a story a while back. One time I was on my way to San Diego, and I didn't feel like booking a hotel for my time there. Even when I was at the airport, I didn't feel like lifting a finger to book it. Then sitting on the flight while they were boarding the passengers, I felt the inspiration and booked 2 nights in Omni San Diego. No idea why that hotel inspired me, and only for 2 nights when I was going to stay there for a whole week. But when I landed, I discovered why, as it just so happened to be a few minutes walk from my client's place who I was going to see anyways, and so that made sense. Then Saturday, I felt it again. Now I wanted to drive to LA for some reason, so I pulled up my Turo app, but I didn't feel like booking any of the cars. And this goes for anything with me nowadays. Intuition. If it doesn't feel ideal, there's no desire to lift a finger. So the next day, I opened up the Turo app, and a car that I like popped up, and I booked it. So now the car is being dropped off on Monday morning at the hotel, 11:30 a.m., right after checkout. Also, the same day I booked Sunday, I pulled up my emails. Usually my inbox is empty. But for some reason, I left one there. An email from my client who booked a Zoom call with me in a few weeks. I was reading his background story in relation to our call, and I saw the words Redondo Beach and Torrance, California. It turns out he was in the LA area. So I called him up and he said, let's meet in person. He said, I'm in San Pedro. I'm flying out to Sacramento on Tuesday, and I'll fly you out there and we can meet there. I said, what are you doing Monday? I'm driving to Redondo Beach and San Pedro is on the way. So we met up Monday afternoon. Again, everything flowing effortlessly in a mutually beneficial way without forcing myself to lift a finger. So the finger may or may not be lifted. It's done so if the inspiration is there. Now, I don't wait for any inspiration. I go about doing whatever else I was going to do anyways, and it shows up. Otherwise, a person could worry about the how and unnecessarily forcefully lift a finger. This entire theater is God's dream, and we don't need to interfere with the process. Now, you might also like the video I released on Tuesday titled, Do Not Conform to This World, Quantum Leap Instead, for another story and process, because what we're doing here is we're letting the world be as it is. We're not trying to change it. Wisdom of the ancients. We simply imagine what implies how our world to be now. Also wisdom of the ancients. It's all throughout the Bible. Everything else is done for you accordingly. So I recommend imagining that you are ideal in every way. Certainly, I already imagine you that way. You are all that you desire to be now. Go to the end and capture that feeling by acknowledging that you are that now. Dwell in that feeling, be inspired, and live from that feeling of being all that you desire to be now. That's prayer, as he says here. Prayer, the art of believing, what is denied by the senses, deals mostly entirely with the subconscious. Through prayer, the subconscious is suggested into appearance of the wish fulfilled. So what we're doing is disentangling our mind from the evidence of the senses and feel ourselves to be how we desire to be. We can do this during any appearance we would not consider ideal. If anything appears that seems to deny that you already are all that you desire to be, simply disentangle your mind from the evidence of the senses and feel yourself to be how you desire to be. This simple process becomes a habit and a way of life to experience all that is ideal automatically added unto you as far as the senses perceive. As he says here, sow a thought and reap an act. Sow an act and reap a habit. Sow a habit and reap a character. Sow a character and reap a destiny. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, I feel myself to be now, all that I desire to be now, from which all that is lovely, ideal, and true, to how I know myself to be now, is automatically added onto me as far as my senses perceive. I allow the feeling to inspire me, guide me, and reveal that I am ideal now in every area of my life as I realize that all I can possibly need or desire is already mine, needing no helper to give it to me, as it is already mine now. If you would like a copy of this mind map, The link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.